All right, so as you guys are aware, I hope you're aware, we have a test tomorrow. And so what I'm going to do today is to spend the entire day walking through the practice test with you, answering questions that you have, and then I'm going to give you some very good news at the end of the class. So you have something to look forward to at the end of the class. Now, before I get into the practice test, there is one particular type of statement that I want to draw your attention to because it was a big issue on several people who are coming to me asking for help on the homework, and that is statements that have the word except in them. Now, we briefly touched on this in our lecture, but I want to circle back because this was very, very confusing for you guys. And honestly, it's still kind of confusing for me. So I don't want to pretend like I have this and you guys need to get on my level. Like, this is a hard concept, okay? So don't be discouraged if you were confused by this. But what I said in your notes is that statements, and I'm sorry for people who are watching this because you can't read the screen, statements that contain except contain two different independent statements. And they both would be a valid option for you to translate them into. But what you have to ask yourself is, what is the speaker or writer or author trying to communicate? So for example, this was in your notes. The statement, everybody went to the party except the Montagues, can be translated in two different ways, and they are both logically valid. You could say, no Montagues were party attenders, or you could say, all non-Montagues were party attenders, because technically speaking, this statement could be translated either way. But thinking practically, it's very obvious that the first one is the right choice. The author is not saying every single person on the planet except for the Montagues went to the party. What the author is saying is there were no Montagues at the party. Okay, so both of these would be valid options. Not yet. And it's up to you to decide which one it would be. So in your homework last night, you were given this sentence and told to put it into categorical form. Anything that is worshipped is an idol except for the true God. That's really confusing. Which one? What do I do? Okay, well, just like this sentence, and I even put it in the same order, so you see the parallelism here. This sentence could be taken to mean one of two things. Either it means no true God is a worshipped idol, or it means all worshipped false gods are idols. Now, is there a big difference in the meaning of these two? Now, they're basically communicating the same thing. Like, put your mask on, right? Like, or keep your mask on. That's basically saying the same thing. But if you really think about it, what is the weight of this sentence? What is it saying? Ben?
It's saying that all idols are not the true God.
Yeah, so which one of these options do you think is the best option?
The first one.
Actually, it's the second one. I mean, you can even do it by word count. Anything, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. The weight of the sentence is on the worship false gods being idols. So the better option would be saying all worship false gods are idols. Now, both of these would be technically right, but where the skill comes in is knowing, okay, option 1 is this, option 2 is this. I think the weight of this sentence, the emphasis of this sentence is on worship false gods being idols. And so that's how I'm going to translate it, okay? Now, that obviously has implications for how you translate the other phrases, because you can have the 3 terms, but be on guard against except. But I will tell you, I've looked at your practice test and your real test. There's only one except on your test tomorrow. So don't stay up all night worrying about this, but just know when you see it. But notice, what are your 2 options for an except statement? What types of statements, Vandernoot?
A or E's.
A or E's. Neither one of these are a particular statement. They are both, you're either going to translate it as a universal negative or a universal affirmative. Same over here. Okay, so except sentences are almost always going to be universals. It's your choice. Is it a universal affirmative, a universal negative? What's the subject? What's the predicate? You have a little wiggle room there. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I'm going to give you your practice test, and we're going to walk through this one at a time. I'm going to give you guys 6 of these. And I want you to fill these out as we're going, and this is going to help you study this evening. Keever? No, not yet. We should have done that before class. We do that before class. All right. Pass those back. They took my podium away from me, so I had to hold my book.
No.
Who did it?
Why do I get you?
Wait.
I have 2.
Great. Okay, just hold on for now. All right, so we're looking at the practice test. I'm not going to take time on the vocabulary one. Just know, again, if they ask you a definition on the practice test, they're probably going to ask you something similar to that on the real test. Where I want to start looking is at problems 2 through 4. So it says, give an example of each type of statement. So give me, what is an indefinite statement? Somebody raise their hand and tell me, what is an indefinite statement? Curran?
A statement that is definitely true.
No, an indefinite statement. Eden? No, that's a conditional. So an indefinite statement is a statement where you don't know if it's particular or universal. So think about our example, cats sang outside my window. Okay? It's a statement that could be translated as all, or it could be translated as some, depending on how it's being used. So it's indefinite because there's not one definite answer. So in this particular example, for number 2, you might write something like this. And you'll remember this from your homework. Boys threw rocks at me. Okay, now technically, could that be translated all boys threw rocks at me?
Yeah.
Technically, it could be. But what is the more likely meaning? Some boys threw rocks at me. So this would be your answer for number 2. Boys threw rocks at me. That is an indefinite statement. It could be translated all. It could be translated some. You'll just have to decide what the author is trying to say. Okay, number 3, Eden. What's a hypothetical statement? You answered before. That's what I called on you. An if-then. A hypothetical. Remember? If-then. So, for example, here's your answer for number 3. If I study, then I will pass the test. Okay? It's a hypothetical because it hasn't happened yet. You haven't studied yet, but you're saying if I do study, then I will pass the test. Okay? So remember, not every conditional will say the words if and then. So if you saw a sign that said, trespassers will be shot, that is also a conditional. Because what's it saying? If you trespass, then you will be shot. So sometimes in a conditional, it won't have if and then. It might just have one. It might just have if. It might just have then. It might have neither. But if the statement is referring to something that will happen if something else happens first, that's a hypothetical. Yes? Okay. Keeper?
Are they all like cause and effect?
Are they all cause and effect? In some sense. But what they are is what I just said. A conditional statement like this, a hypothetical statement like this, is a statement that says, this will happen if this other thing happens first. Okay? So, this will happen. You will pass if this other thing happens first, the studying. If I study, then I will pass. That's what it's saying. If this thing happens, this other thing has to happen first. Okay? So that's an indefinite, that's a hypothetical. A singular statement refers to just a singular person or an object. Okay? So Mr. Wood is a great teacher. That is a singular statement, and I want to see every single person writing that down. Vandernoot. So the point is, whatever your singular statement is, you're referring to one person or one thing or one event. It's not indefinite, okay? It's not a hypothetical. It's a singular statement, and we know that all singular statements are translated as what? What type of statement? All or no. They're universals, right? Depending on if it's an affirmative or a negative. So any questions about indefinite, hypothetical, and singular statements? Be able to recognize those tomorrow. Be able to recognize those tomorrow. McKeever, what did I just say twice? Bingo. Okay, be able to recognize those tomorrow. All right, so look at 5 through 8. It says, for each statement, write 2 equivalent immediate inferences. Identify each immediate inference as converse, obverse, and contrapositive. So what does every categorical statement have? Which immediate inference applies for all of them?
Obverse.
Yeah, obverse. They all have an obverse where we change the quality and negate the predicate. So, all nomads are wanderers. I want us to do the obverse first for all of these. Okay? So for the sake of time, can somebody just raise their hand and tell me what the obverse would be? George?
No nomads are non-wanderers.
No nomads were non-wanderers.
Why does it work?
Because the original is where?
It's
But on yours is R.
Okay, then it's R. Okay, but do we see what we did? No nomads are non-wanderers. We changed the quality, we negated the predicate. Okay? Now that's an A statement, so what's the other immediate inference we can do from an A? Contrapositive. Can somebody raise their hand and tell me what the contrapositive would be? Eden?
All non-wanderers are non-nomads.
All non-wanderers, spelled that wrong, are non-nomads. Okay? You switch the subject and the predicate, and you negate them both. Simple enough, okay? So obverse, change the quality, negate the predicate. Contrapositive, switch the subject and the predicate, negate them both. Number 6, no scientists are prattlers. To prattle on means to just babble on endlessly. No scientists are prattlers. All right, so what is the obverse? Ava?
Wouldn't it be all scientists are non-prattlers?
Okay, all
No.
scientists, so we change the quality, are, what do you say the negative would be?
Wait, hold on. Non-prattlers. That means that they are prattlers. Wait, no. No, that means they aren't.
No, you're good. Yeah, all you gotta do is negate it. So all scientists are non-prattlers. Okay, so this is an O. So what's the other relationship we can do, Luke? What are the two immediate inferences for an E statement? Sorry, for an E statement.
Converse.
Converse. So what's the converse of this?
Converse is all.
Now, in a converse, all you do, Luke, is you switch the subject and the predicate. You don't change the quality. You don't negate anything.
Okay.
No prattlers or scientists. Okay, that's all you got to do. So number 7, some charismatics are Pentecostals. Okay, what type of statement is that? An I. So what are the two immediate inferences we can get from an I?
Obverse and obverse.
An obverse and a converse. Okay, so just like this one. So can somebody who hasn't answered yet, like Thomas Fleming, can you do the obverse for me, please?
Some charismatics are not Pentecostals.
Okay, so you change the quality from affirmative to negative. Are what?
Not non-Pentecostals.
Are not non-Pentecostals. Okay, so that's the obverse. Okay, Vandernoot, give me the converse.
Some Pentecostals are charismatics.
Some Pentecostals are charismatics. Now, on the test tomorrow, there's also a place, as you can see, where you would be labeling these as you go, but don't worry about that today. But just know that tomorrow you have to do these and label these. Okay, that's number 7. Number 8. I haven't looked at it yet, but I bet it's going to be an O statement. What is this statement?
Some Africans are not Christians.
Some Africans are not Christians. Okay, so let's do the obverse first. McKeever, can you do the obverse for us, please?
Some Africans are non-Christians.
Some Africans are non-Christians. Excellent work. And then, Jesse, can you do the contrapositive for us, please?
Some Christians
Or you
are.
got to reverse them and negate them both. I hate to say that.
Yeah.
Answer it. Take a second to think about it, then answer it. Reverse the subject and the predicate and negate them both. What does it mean to negate something? What do you have to do to negate something?
Just make it like negative.
Right, and how do you do that? What have we been doing? When we negate something, what 3-letter word have we been putting in front of it? Non. Okay, so what would,
Some non.
okay, some non-Christians,
Are African.
well, we don't, when we do a contrapositive, we don't change the quality. So we're going to leave the are not, okay, but negate the subject for me.
Are non-Africans.
are not non-Africans. Okay? Some non-Christians are not non-Africans. Now, we can obviously reduce some of those down, but that's how we do it. So any questions about how to do those three immediate inferences? There is a converse, an obverse, and a contrapositive. We good on those?
For the
Yes.
contrapositive, you negate both.
You switch them and you negate both of them.
But that doesn't mean that even if it's like for number 8, when you said or not, you don't take out the not.
So if all they ask you to do is to give the immediate inference and you're not doing a syllogism, just leave it like this. If you were doing a syllogism and having to use you want your 3 terms, then go ahead and reduce it down. So this would now become some non-Christians are Africans. Okay, so we reduce it, but if all you're doing is drawing immediate inference, do not reduce it down. Okay, so that's 1 through 8. Now let's look at number 9. It says, using immediate inferences, translate this argument into a standard categorical syllogism. Now let me just stop you right there. Instructions matter. So fairly obvious on number 9. What is the conclusion?
Therefore, some impossible events.
Some impossible events are not non-miracles. Everything in you wants to do what with that predicate? Reduce it down to what?
Some impossible events are miracles.
Right. But is that an immediate inference?
No.
No. So you have to do an immediate inference. You cannot just cancel the not and the non. You have to do an immediate inference. Okay? So what type of statement is the conclusion? Some impossible events are not non-miracles.
O.
That's an O. So what are my 2 viable options that I could do here? Eden?
Obverse and contrapositive.
Obverse and a contrapositive. Okay? What would it be as an obverse? Ben?
Some impossible events are miracles.
Some impossible events are non-miracles, right?
But I thought obverse switches the.
You switch.
It's non.
Yeah, so now it would be, so it would be some impossible events, and then we've switched the quality, so now some impossible events are non-miracles, which would reduce down to some impossible events are miracles. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, that's not going to work. I'm going to save you some time, and if you did this for yourself, you would see that's not going to work. So let's do the contrapositive. What would the contrapositive of some impossible events are not non-miracles be? Luke?
Some non-miracles are not impossible events.
Okay, so we've got to change, Luke. We've got to switch the subject and the predicate, and we've got to negate them both. So some. What would the negation of non-miracles sound like? Gonna sound silly. Non-miracles. Okay, now I just told Ava if you're doing a syllogism, you can reduce. So what would the reduced form of non-miracles be? Miracles, right? The 2 nons cancel out. So we would say some miracles, okay? Some miracles, and then we have switched. Impossible is now our predicate, and we've negated impossible. So non-impossible events, how does that reduce down? What is that now?
Impossible.
Non and M cancel out, right? They're both negations. And so what am I left with? Possible events. Yeah, some miracles are not possible events. Okay? Some miracles are not possible events. So we've done the work. We found our conclusion. I think it will be pretty straightforward from here. So my major term is possible events. My minor term is miracles. Somebody give me the major premise as it is written on the page for you. Curran?
Some possible events are probable events.
Say that again. Sorry.
Some possible events are probable.
Okay. Do I have to do anything to that?
No.
Nope. It is good. So I can just write that on up there. And here's a little hint for you. You want to make this as easy as possible. And if you're faced with a choice between doing, on our conclusion, am I going to do a contrapositive or am I going to do an obverse? If you realize that doing one of those gives you already a matched up major premise, then do that one. So if we had done the obverse, it wouldn't have matched up with the major premise. But by doing the contrapositive, the major premise lines up perfectly. We're left with possible events and probable events. All right, so what's that make my minor premise? All miracles are improbable events, okay? Does that work? No. Okay, so what do I need to do to that A statement? Ben?
You need to do the obverse because then it will be no miracles are non-improbable events, and that can reduce to no miracles are probable events.
That's exactly right. Do you hear what he said?
Yes.
We do the obverse because that changes the quality from all miracles to no miracles, and it negates the predicate, which is improbable, and that would have non-improbable, which gives us no miracles are probable events.
Now do we check for validity?
But what do the instructions say?
Nothing.
Then we don't do it. We don't have to check for validity on this one.
What was
George,
your mind, Jim?
you tell me.
There's like a glare that. Oh, okay.
Miracles. Okay, any questions about the front of the page? All right, flip over to the back. 10 through 15, translate the given statement into standard categorical form. Okay? Better marker than this.
I did have one question.
Okay.
So if you do something different, but all of the so if you do something different, but you change all of the major roots and minor differences, but they all go together, would that still be right? Or would
It says answers may vary, but they need to be equivalent. In other words, your answer can be different, but you still have to have 3 terms and 3 categorical statements. Especially since we're not checking for validity. There are different ways to do it, but choose the easiest way to do it, is what I would say. All right, so number 10, Fred is an elder. What type of statement is that?
A
Universal.
No, it's
Well, it's going to be a universal, but it's a singular statement, right? And how do we translate singular statements, Rocco? As universal. So Fred is an elder becomes what? All Fred is an elder. Okay? All right, all Fred is an elder. Number 11. Bats are not blind. Okay, so here's our question. Is that going to be a singular statement or is that an indefinite statement? What do you think the author is referring to? It's a singular statement, right? He is talking about all bats. Okay, so McKeever, what would that be?
No bats are blind.
No bats are no bats. Technically, we would say blind things instead of ending with an adjective, but no bats are blind things or no bats are blind creatures. But yeah, okay. Number 12, Luke. The original is only believers go to heaven. Okay, what type of statement or what type of word is only? Is that an inclusive or an exclusive? It's an exclusive because it's excluding thing. It's saying, here's the border. Only these people and not these people, okay? So when we do an exclusive, just to remind us all, the word immediately after the exclusive becomes my predicate, and the rest of it becomes my subject, okay? So this is going to sound awkward. First off, here's the question. Now that we know that, here's the question to help you. Is this going to be a universal or a particular statement? It's a universal. And is it affirming or negating something? It's affirming. So it's going to be a universal affirmative, and believers is going to be our predicate. So what would that sound like? All
heaven goers.
heaven goers. Yeah. All heaven goers
How do you
are
goers?
go with an ERS. Yes.
I know it's wrong to say no unbelievers go to heaven, but why?
It would be wrong because this statement is not a negative, it's an affirmative. It is saying that only believers go to heaven. So it is affirming something about believers. They go to heaven. It's not negating something about unbelievers. That is a universal affirmative. You're right. It wouldn't be wrong factually.
It's kind of saying the same thing, like no unbelievers.
Yeah, the meaning would not be the same, would not be different, but we want to keep it in the same logical form. That's a universal affirmative. We'll keep it that way. Number 13, Gracie. Jamie passes. Is it whenever she studies?
Yeah.
Jamie passes
Whenever she studies.
whenever she studies. Okay, now we have whenever, which is an inclusive word, and in an inclusive, what comes next is our subject. Okay, so whenever, is this a universal or a particular statement? It's universal. It's saying every time she studies, she passes. Is this an affirmative or a negative?
Affirmative.
It's affirmative. So we know it's going to be all. And when we talk about whenever, what's going to be our helping word that we should add? Times, right? So all the times she studies, are times.
When.
Yeah, you could say when she passes, or times when she passes, or
Do
times
you
she
have
passes.
to put Jamie or times Jamie passes?
I wouldn't think so. No, it doesn't. Well, are times she or Jamie, either one would be fine.
Can you switch the order?
Which words?
All times Jamie passes or times she studies?
No, because remember in an inclusive, you have to put the whatever comes next as your subject. Okay, so time she studies has to be my subject. All right, one more of these or two more of these. Number 14. Can somebody read me the original?
Whoever finds wisdom finds life.
Okay, whoever finds wisdom finds life. Okay, Rocco, since you were foolish enough to read something, now I'm going to call on you. All right, whoever, what type of word is that?
That's inclusive.
Inclusive, so what comes next?
Finds wisdom.
Okay, and so that is going to be my what?
Subject.
My subject, okay? Is this a universal or a particular?
The universe.
Universal, is it affirmative or negative?
Affirmative.
Affirmative, so it's going to be a universal affirmative, and it's whoever, so what's going to be my helping word that I add in there?
Who?
No?
Person.
All the people, okay? All the people or all the persons, all the people
Who
find wisdom.
are finders of life.
Yeah, you could say are finders of life, or you could say are people who find life. Okay? Yes.
Would you count it wrong if we said like all wisdom finders
Yeah.
Nope.
or life finders?
Nope, that's actually what the book said.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine. All wisdom finders are life finders. Yeah. All right, number 15. He will collapse. What does it say? He will collapse what?
Unless he sits down.
He will collapse.
Is that a hypothetical?
No, I think it is.
But unless inclusive, exclusive, or hypothetical?
Exclusive and by.
Unless is an exclusive word. This is going to be an exclusive statement. Okay?
What about I will? Or is that just tense of verb?
That's just the tense of the verb. Yeah. Because remember, the subject will come first, and then the then. So it's not if he collapses, he will sit down. It's he will collapse unless he sits down.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So whoever read that, I'm going to make Rocco do it anyway because that's fun for me. Rocco. Yes, indeed. Again, Rocco. Unless. So what comes next is my what?
Predicate.
It's my predicate. Okay. Is this universal or particular?
Particular.
This is actually a universal. It's saying that every time he doesn't sit down, he's going to collapse. Okay, so it's saying every time, right? He will collapse unless he does this. And is this an affirmative or a negative?
Affirmative.
It is an affirmative. Yes. Okay. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm looking at this answer. I've looked at this answer all morning. This does not make any sense to me, and I cannot tell you why this is the answer. And so I would be very, very liberal about how I graded this. Here's the answer they put in the book.
All the times he sits down, the times he will collapse.
All times he does not sit down
Wouldn't it be no?
That'd be no.
are times he collapses. Okay?
I've seen that in examples.
All times he does not sit down. So I think what they were saying is that this is your subject right here. Times he does not sit down are, here's your predicate, times he collapses. My problem is not with the presence of the word not. My problem is I thought sit down is supposed to be the predicate because it's after an exclusive word.
Yeah.
So I'm very puzzled by this answer, and I don't know if this is a typo or if I'm not smart enough to understand it. I don't know. So if you get one of these tomorrow, just do the very best you can. And if it's an answer like this, I'm going to not hold that against you, okay? Because that's really confusing to me because they've said over and over again, this is the predicate, and then they put it in the subject. So I don't know why they did that. I don't really understand that. And I would grade you the way that I've taught you, not the way the book said it in that instance, okay?
Well, I guess the reason
I can't hear you over your mask being down again.
is that maybe the reason they put it in the subject is because if they put it in the predicate, wouldn't it be all times he collapses or times he sits down?
Or times he does not sit.
Or what about no times he sits down or times he collapses?
Oh yeah, that would have been better.
No times he sits down. Well, I think their problem would be, and we'll get to this after our test next week. He could collapse for other reasons besides not sitting down. So it wouldn't be true that no times he collapses. So I think here's what I would say, guys. The reason this is the answer is because logically and factually, this lines up with the original statement, even if the form is slightly different. So you might have to break a rule tomorrow, okay? And again, I'm not going to hold against you, but if you're getting one of these situations, I think you're allowed to break this rule because otherwise the sentence just doesn't make any sense. But these two are logically equivalent. All right, but let's move on. 16 through 18. We don't have time to do. We'll have time to do a couple of these.
What's the good news?
I'm not done with my class yet.
I think
About what? I just asked what the good news was. You said that at the end of class you could get.
I said I'm not done with my class yet. Okay,
Nobody's even.
I'm not really sure what's happening, so let's just stop. All right, number 16 through 18, translate the argument into standard categorical syllogism. Do not abbreviate. Is there anything in those instructions about testing for validity? No, so you don't have to. Okay, he sings wherever he goes, so he must sing in all the classrooms, for he visits all of them. Okay, he must sing in all the classrooms. That's our conclusion. Put that into categorical form. Is it universal or particular?
universal.
Is it affirmative or negative?
Affirmative.
Okay, so we know it's going to start with the word all. Okay, so
All times he sings
I always
for
get
times
times he's in the classroom.
okay, but is the word time is the subject is the I'm sorry over is the conclusion referring to time or a place? A place. So our statement needs to have a place.
So all times he's in the classroom or
Wait, we don't want time. We want place.
All
Our
places in
sentence.
the classroom are places he must sing.
Say hold on.
All classrooms are places they sing.
All classrooms are places he sings. Okay? All classrooms are places he sings. Well done, Thomas. All right. So if this is my conclusion, classrooms, places he sings, I got my major term and my minor term. What is my major premise? What's as it's written,
He sings wherever he goes.
he sings wherever he goes. Okay? No, that's right. So wherever is an inclusive word. So is this going to be an affirmative or a negative?
Affirmative.
Is it going to be universal or particular?
Universal.
Universal. So wherever he goes. So he goes has to be my subject. What helping word should I add in there? Yeah, places. All places he goes. Or
Places he sings at.
places are places he
He
sings. Just sings. Places he sings. Okay, so now we got my major premise. What's my minor premise?
Or he visits all of
He
them.
visits all of them. Okay, is that going to be a universal or a particular? Universal. Affirmative or negative?
Affirmative.
So it's a universal affirmative. And what do I already know? I already know my major, I know my minor term, classrooms. Okay, what is my middle term going to be?
Places he goes.
Places he goes.
All
Okay.
places he goes are classrooms.
Okay. Well, no. If all places he goes are classrooms, does he go anywhere else but classrooms? No. All classrooms. All classrooms are places he goes. Now, again, those are awkwardly worded sentences, but you've got to know. Gentlemen, don't need to embarrass you on a video that your parents are probably going to watch and call you out by name. So you've got to know all these rules. You've got to do all these statements. Make sure you can kind of, like I said, not a single individual step of this is difficult. What is difficult is doing like 15 things in a row correctly. Okay, I understand that, but that's what we got to be striving for tomorrow. So for the sake of time, let's just find the conclusion for 17 and 18, and you can work this out on your own if you want. So what is the conclusion as it is written in number 17?
All our school maps must have been printed before 1990.
Okay, so what would that be in categorical form? Is it a universal or particular?
Universal.
Affirmative or negative? Affirmative. So it's going to start with the word all. What is the subject? School maps. Okay, and what are we saying about those maps?
They've been printed before 1920.
Okay, so the subject is school maps, and so we can just say all our school maps.
Were.
Okay, so we can say either were printed before 1990, or we're going to keep it. We're going to say are pre-1990 maps. Okay, see what we did there? We're just going to keep it in the present tense. If you said were printed before 1990, as long as you're consistent, that's fine. All right, number 18. Okay, what is my conclusion?
Not all of this counts.
Not all of counsel is free.
Not all.
Actually, I want to do this. Nothing is free except bad advice. Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you that is your major premise. What are my two options?
No thing is free. No free things are bad advice.
Okay, is that true?
No.
Okay, so what the other one? It needs to be an all statement.
All free. All
No, you're right. All free.
free things are.
Close. All free advice or all free counsel is bad advice. Okay? The statement, nothing is free except bad advice, says all free counsel is bad advice. Because it's saying, of all the things that are free in the universe, of all the free counsel, they're all bad advice.
Is
Okay?
that the major?
So that would be your major premise. All free counsel is bad advice. So again, take a look in your textbook on the section about accept statements. So here is your good news, two pieces of good news for your test tomorrow. Piece 1, no catechism portion whatsoever. Okay? Piece 2, you may bring to your test one piece of notebook paper filled with whatever information you want to use on your test.
What?
You got to write it down by hand, nothing typed, nothing printed. You have to write it down by hand. I'm going to check each one of them individually. Nobody try to make one, like McKeever's going to write one and copy it and give it to all of his buddies, right?
Yeah.
You have to write it by hand. You can bring in one piece of notebook paper. You can fill it up back and front. You can fill it up every square inch of that with whatever you want, but you may use that on your test tomorrow, okay? Yes.
That's crazy.